All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Kate Madigan and I get to direct the Michigan Climate Action Network. And in a moment, we're going to get a briefing from Douglas Jester, who worked tirelessly for 2 years at least with a team of other organizations in Michigan to pass the new energy laws that passed in December. So he will give us a briefing on that process, what's in those laws, and what's going on now to add the details. The state's making a lot of important decisions. So if you have any questions for Douglas and you are muted right now, there is a chat feature. You can write your questions in there, and I can read those questions after his briefing. Okay, so Bill, is there any other technical things that I should tell folks before we?
No, I think we're all here. It looks like everything is working. If you're dialing in, there's no way to really ask a question, but you feel free to email Kate at environmentalcouncil.org with any questions if you have any. If you're calling in and not on the computer.
Great. Yes,
and I can get to those afterwards.
Yeah, I can check that during Douglas's briefing. And then after the Q&A, we have some other panelists that are doing climate work around the state, and we'll have a chance to get some updates from those folks that have joined us today. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Douglas Jester. Douglas is a partner at 5 Lakes Energy. He specializes in utility regulation, energy policy research, and modeling. Doug served as Senior Energy Policy Advisor at the Michigan Department of Energy, Labor, and Economic Growth, and also worked for the Michigan Departments of Natural Resources and the Department of Environmental Quality. While at the DNR, he personally conceived and led the efforts to develop Michigan's first in the world automated system to issue hunting and fishing licenses, for which he was recognized by the Smithsonian Museum. He also worked with the Los Alamos National Laboratory. He is an adjunct faculty at Michigan State University and formerly served as the mayor of East Lansing. And we're very lucky to have him joining us today to talk about these important laws. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of ancient history there.
A lot of really impressive work.
Thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the work that all of you are doing to address climate mitigation here in Michigan. I want to talk about what we have been doing on the clean energy front in that same mission. So a little bit of history is in order, just to provide context. Michigan's first legislative movement to clean up the energy supply was really in 2001, when the Public Service Commission was directed to promote use of renewable energy, doing that both by sort of convening stakeholders and encouraging it, but also by requiring individual utilities to have what was identified as a green tariff. And then in 2008, there was a legislative package. It was driven by the desire of the utilities to move from a competitive market in power generation that was created in 2001 back to a regulated market where they would be assured recovery of their costs and return on investment and those kinds of things. Then Governor Granholm and my partners, our former partners, Skip Pruss, and current partners, Lisa Clark and Jamie Scripps, worked very hard on that legislative package. And part of it was that the Michigan Clean, Renewable, and Efficient Energy Act was included in the package. That required each utility to have an energy efficiency program where they would assist their customers in reducing their electricity usage. That ramped up from having no such programs in 2008 to, by 2012, each of the electric utilities having a program that was at least providing 1% per year increase in energy efficiency. And then, in addition, that same act required each electricity provider in Michigan, whether they were a regulated utility, a municipal utility, a cooperative, or a competitive supplier, to get 10% of their electricity sales from a renewable energy resource. Prior to the act, mostly through historical hydropower and biomass plants, we were at about 3% statewide, and the requirement was that they get to 10% by 2015. And then the third major piece was to create a net metering program for each of the utilities, where people could have behind the meter solar and pay basically for the net consumption that they had from the utility, running the meter backward when they overproduced, and of course running it forward when they didn't meet their own needs. So that was the status of the law going into 2012. In 2012, I and many others participated in a ballot initiative campaign to increase the renewable portfolio standard. We were then seeing the expected accomplishment of the 10%, and had gone well. We thought that it should be increased. We were not successful in that ballot initiative, largely because there were 6 ballot questions, and the business community was able to come together on no on everything. And the utilities ran a whole lot of ads, along with a lot of ads on every other ballot question. So we were winning up until 3 weeks before the election, as were some other ballot questions, and it all collapsed to no, with about the same result as a result of those opposition campaigns. So that put us to the beginning of 2013 with a loss on the ballot question, and we could foresee the end of the policies that were established in the 2008 legislative package. We started then pushing on the administration. The governor did an address in December where he ordered a study by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the Michigan Public Service Commission to help him decide what his energy policy should be. That took a year. And so we came to the beginning of 2014 with that report in hand, and then the governor did a special message to the legislature where he outlined what he thought the state's energy policy should be. And in that, he fairly strongly supported continuing and even expanding the energy efficiency requirement, but wanted to have additional renewables come just largely out of competition with whatever other form of generation might be considered by the utilities. Later in 2014, after a bit of jockeying amongst the administration, the Senate, and the House, the Senate Energy Committee convened a stakeholder group on which I served, along with 35 other people. And for about 6 months, we talked about what should be in a legislative package. After that, Senator Knopfs, who was and is chair of the committee, went off and developed a package. That package rescinded the energy efficiency standard and the renewable energy standard, and proposed to change net metering so that it would effectively be uneconomic. So we started out in a hole at that point. And then the 2 years of labor that Kate mentioned began, where we had a lot of partners and worked very hard to advance the cause. we had bottled things up a little bit in the Senate, so the House actually took up bills first. Those were shaped by then Chair Eric Nesbitt, and they were almost as bad as the Senate version. We pursued this politically by first trying to consolidate all of the Democrats with caucus positions, which we did succeed in doing. And then on the Republican side, tried to cultivate as many supporters as we could. The Republicans were split, essentially irrevocably, between those Republicans who favor the currently successful and powerful and those that have an ideological commitment to free markets. So a part of the legislative package was concerned with whether we would go back to full competition on generation, or we would have limited or no competition. The utilities favored no competition. A lot of the larger businesses in the state were in favor of competition, and so the Republicans were really stuck. And that was very important to the outcome. It meant that they couldn't move legislation without the Democrats. And then we had just enough friendly Republicans that in the end, it was okay for Republicans to support a package that included clean energy policies. So the outcome that we got was simply that we maintained the 1% minimum standard for energy efficiency, sweetened the incentives for utilities to exceed that, and as a result, they are now all really aiming for 1.5% per year in order to take advantage of those incentives. It provided for on-bill financing for residential customers, which is a way that someone can do deep retrofits, essentially spend a lot of money, but get that money from the utility and pay it back on the utility bill. And that's done with essentially a guarantee of a net bill savings. So it can be a good deal. That's voluntary on the part of the utilities, and other than Holland, we don't have any programs in place yet, but we think those will come. On the renewable front, we increased the renewable portfolio standard to 15% by 2021. And then there is a combined energy efficiency and renewable generation goal in 2025 of 35% of sales. While the utilities have some choice, we think that's going to look like 18 to 20% renewables and the rest efficiency. And then there was one other important provision on the renewable side, which was a requirement that each utility offer a customer-initiated renewable energy program. This is sort of the next generation of those green power programs. This is better tailored to the interests of large customers. And then finally, we saved net metering with a provision that the commission is supposed to do a study on what is the right kind of tariff to use for customers with distributed generation. And then that will replace net metering, beginning with any utility rate cases that are filed after June 1st of 2018. And then the final big piece of policy was something called integrated resource planning. This is a discipline of planning for utilities that's supposed to consider both demand and generation resources and find the best combination of those, considering sort of all aspects of it. And that process is to begin with the commission adopting some guidelines for the utilities through a case which is now underway and is open for public comment. This is not a contested case like the normal commission proceedings, but one that's open to sort of all members of the public. And then beginning next year, the utilities will individually file integrated resource plans following those guidelines, which will be contested cases where parties, like Michigan Environmental Council, can intervene and make a case that the integrated resource plan should be different than what the utility proposes. There are a lot of assignments to the Public Service Commission across all of these issues in the legislation, and so we've been busy really all of this calendar year and will continue to be well into next year with Commission stakeholder groups and cases that will sort of set the details of the policy or the Commission's first impression on how to implement the policies that were in the legislation. So that's where things stand as of now. I want to highlight a couple of things related to climate and then how you can participate. By my analysis, the net effect of these requirements should be effectively that Michigan complies with what was the Clean Power Plan. The level of efficiency and renewables required would have essentially put us into compliance. Partly as a result of planning for that compliance and partly as a result for planning to comply with the Clean Power Plan, DTE announced a couple of months ago that they plan to achieve an 80% reduction in their carbon emissions by 2050. With actually most of that, about 75% reduction occurring by 2040. Through a combination of coal plant closures and then replacement of those by a mixture of efficiency, natural gas, combined cycle plants, and renewables. And they currently have a certificate of necessity case that's really just beginning, where they're seeking Commission approval for a large combined cycle natural gas plant in order to replace proposed coal retirements early in the 2020s. In that plan that they submitted along with the request to the Commission, they show they show compliance with the Renewable Energy Plan requirements, but then most of the incremental renewables come after 2025. Jerry Anderson, the CEO of DTE, has been quoted in the press as having said at a couple of utility industry events that they had not thought they could do this until they were forced to do the planning by the regulation that they were facing. And then they found out not only that they could, but that there would not be any resulting increase in costs to their customers over what they would have otherwise done. So I think that's really important news. That doesn't mean I'm satisfied with what DTE is doing, but I think the fact that the regulatory effort showed them that they could do even more on economically attractive terms is a really important consequence of all of this. So now the things that you can act on. We do have a docket currently open at the Commission for comments on integrated resource plan guidelines that the Commission has published in draft. And Noah, I think, is going to talk a little bit later about some specifics on that. Secondly, there's a set of cases that will be filed, one for each of the regulated utilities, on October 18th, where they will describe the programs that they propose to offer in order to support this customer-initiated renewable energy requirement. That should be open to all customers, and one of the challenges we have is to convince them that there's a lot of demand and that they really should plan for it. So far, they've not, for example, in the DTE plan that I just mentioned, not shown any significant uptake of that offer. We know of a number of very large customers of DTE and consumers that have sustainability commitments, climate commitments, where they want to use as much as 100% of their power coming from renewable resources. And we think there's demand on the corporate side for about 5% of utility sales within the next certainly within the next decade, sooner if good offers are available through that channel. Many of you are working with communities, cities that have either made such commitments or are getting there. And if we can get them to weigh in just as comment in those cases, saying we want to buy this much renewable energy, we can help to demonstrate demand and push the utilities into more substantial offerings. So that's something that is on the near-term horizon that I urge you to think about participating in. So I think that's probably enough as an overview, and be happy to answer any questions or pass the baton.
Great. Thank you so much, Douglas. This was a really great overview. Yes, we'd love to open it up for questions. So if you are muted and you have the ability to unmute yourself, go ahead and do that now. I'm going to unmute some folks on the phone. And if you have called in, there's no way to unmute you. But if you would send me an email if you have a question at kate@environmentalcouncil.org, I will be checking my email and can add those. So those that are able, does anyone have a question for Douglas?
I have a question.
Doug, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You first, sir.
Okay. I'm wondering, is there any connection that you've seen with the PACE Authority District program that allows long-term low interest rates to like big users like emergency rooms, factories, that sort of thing? We have some of those, here, but we haven't got the PACE.
Yeah, the PACE program was also authorized in the 2008 package, and I was remiss in not mentioning it. It's only available to commercial and industrial customers, and we view this on-bill financing for residential customers as kind of the complement to that.
Gotcha.
The utilities can only get credit for the PACE programs if they, also provide incentives to those same activities. And then I think, PACE definitely helps them to achieve it. PACE also helps directly, of course, and I think is a very important program. We've been doing what we can to support it as it develops across the state. But it was not embedded in the current or in the recent legislative package.
Thank you. I've been working on it for 3 years. I know they have it in Leelanau. I was just at a county commissioners conference in Mackinac Island. I've met some people from DTE and consumers and also from Leelanau, and they said we have it in Leelanau County, but nobody wants to use it. It's frustrating to me.
The main challenge with the PACE program is the transaction costs of getting a loan under the PACE program are still fairly high, and as a result, the minimum loan amount that makes sense is pretty large. So it's really only large users of electricity or water or natural gas, that can successfully take advantage of it. And I think that may be where the barrier is. But if there are any such large customers, then it definitely can give them positive cash flow from the beginning of their improvements, which is, after all, the point.
Thank you.
Douglas, we have another question that Noah typed in to hear about the October opportunity to comment on programs again, particularly the date. And while you're at it, if you could talk about if there are a couple of key talking points that would be good, like if we're reaching out to cities, which I intend to do.
Yeah. Okay, so the cases will be filed by or on October 18th. And then the commission will be considering them over a period that's not prescribed by law, but likely to be in the 6 to 9 month range. These will be contested cases where there will be parties who will enter in addition to the utilities, and make arguments about whether the programs are good or bad, or, how they should be different. And several of the organizations that I work with will no doubt intervene in that way. But all commission cases are open for public comment. You can do that by sending email to the secretary of the commission. and giving them your comments and telling them what case it is regarding, and then it goes into the record for the case and is considered by the commission. You can find that email address on the commission's website, but I'd be happy when those cases are filed to follow up, Kate, with the case numbers, so in association with various utilities, so that you can then put out the word as to which cases people might want to file in. I think the most useful public comment in these cases, pending seeing what the utilities actually propose, is evidence of demand. And so getting a city to write in and say, we use 1 million kilowatt hours a year and would, buy that through a renewable energy program as long as the terms are reasonable, then enables those of us who are intervening in the case to really drive for offerings that are large enough to meet that demand and on terms that make sense. So that's what I encourage most of all, is expressions of demand. At the time that the cases are filed, I'd also be happy to supply comments on whatever is filed, but I'll need a couple weeks after they're filed to digest and provide that information.
Okay, great. Other questions?
I have a question, Douglas.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the October 18th cases where the utilities are saying, hey, we have these programs, are they reaching out? Are the utilities actively reaching out and telling people that these kind of things are available, so that people and customers know that they can ask for these kind of things? Are they actively advertising, or are they just kind of putting it out there and hoping that nobody notices?
The traditional green power programs, they've done minimal advertising. They have done some, but it's mostly that they put it occasionally in a bill insert and on their websites. And you have to sort of actively want to find it, to find it on their websites.
So it would behoove us to as a group to kind of find out what these offers are and then try to get them out, do the advertising on their behalf, right?
Yes, it would. The programs that they're currently offering, for the most part, are overpriced, relative to the real cost of renewables. And part of the standard that's in the law for this upcoming round of programs is that they need to do a better job of justifying the cost. So I would advise not promoting the existing programs, but wait and see what these new programs are, and then we can go forward from there. I'm certainly willing to pay extra for renewables myself, and I think others should be as well. But it also should, people shouldn't be stuck in something that is uneconomic when there's something better coming. So that's my recommendation, is to wait on that.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us and for that great briefing and for all the work you're doing, Douglas.
My pleasure.
And I want to let everyone know before we turn to updates that on the Michigan Climate Action Network website, we have a letter that we're going to submit as part of this public comment period for the Integrated Resource Plan. And while it sounds really technical, it's also important for the Public Service Commission to be hearing from us from the people of Michigan that we really care about and want more clean energy. We care about climate change. So that's mixed in with a little bit more of the detailed pieces. That's on our website. We're going to be submitting that on before October 6th. And we have over 200 people that have signed on already. So we've also shared that on the Michigan Climate Action Network Facebook page. If you want to share that to your network and help spread the word, it's an easy way for people to have their voices heard in this process. Okay. So next we're going to get some updates from some of the groups and people around the state that are working on climate change as a network. One of the one of the important things is that we're all staying connected with each other, the work that we're doing, and this is one way to do that. So we have several people right now that you can see their faces, or you can see their names if we're not able to get them on video. And so Sean McBrady, would you kick us off by talking about the Line 5 oil pipeline? And these updates we're hoping to just have like 2 minutes from each person if possible. I know that's not always easy.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Kate. So to start with, on Line 5 right now, we are in the middle of, the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board had their public comment period on the alternatives analysis held in the month of July. We were able to get over 23,000 public comments to the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board telling them to shut down Line 5. So that was definitely a successful time through the public comment for us. After that, we have been focused on working to get seeing what the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board would do regarding the risks analysis, which we found out last week when they established Guy Meadows and Michigan Tech to run a team of Michigan universities to complete the risk analysis over the next 6 months. So we are, still calling for the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board to come out and recommend closing down Line 5 before they get the results of this risk analysis, because the state the Line 5 is in is much worse than was previously anticipated, with all of the things coming out about the coating problems, the bends and the ovaling in the pipeline and stuff like that we've heard about over the last few months. So the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board process is there right now, where they're going to be doing another risk study over the next 6 to 8 months. Then as far as the anchor permits, the state is, the DEQ is also considering right now whether or not to give Enbridge permits to put more anchor points on that are required to keep them within the easement. The state is planning on making a decision on that on November 3rd. So we're going to be engaging in the anchor permit discussion as well. And then I know, as many of you know, we have a big planning meeting coming up next week up in Mount Pleasant, where we're just going to be sort of discussing strategies as we move forward. With Attorney General Schuette announcing for governor, there's also a lot of work we're doing with holding Schuette accountable as the public official who could have shut down Line 5 really at any point over the last 8 years and has decided not to. So yeah, that's where we are with that. Any questions?
Great summary, Sean. Thank you. And I don't know if you mentioned this, Sean is the coordinator now for the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign and works for Clean Water Action, who's a steering committee member for the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign. Great. Thank you. Noah, could you, did someone have a question? No? Okay. Noah, would you be able to give an update on the work that you're doing at EcoWorks?
Absolutely. I wanted to highlight on the implementation side of things here at EcoWorks, our water residential assistance program is about $5,000 away from $700,000 in savings over a little over a year of operation now. This is across 733 plumbing repairs, mainly in the city of Detroit, but across the Tri-County area here. And it's nice being able to work with the folks in this program specifically, as they're able to highlight some of the systemic issues that they're seeing with water repairs, in particular with hot water leaks. I think it's something that drip by drip, we're wasting a lot of energy on a state level with low-income housing from a stock perspective. And so going into the future, I don't even know if it's something that we could get into our measures database to have it be incentivized for these hot water leaks to be fixed. But we're wasting a lot of energy, and it's these leaks are also contributing to adverse health impacts, mold, and such in homes. So I wanted to highlight that work that we're doing here at EcoWorks. But I also wanted to bring up, as Doug mentioned during his comments, and Kate, you just talked about it too, Some of the work that I do with the Michigan Energy Efficiency for All network, we focus on affordable multifamily and how more efficiency in affordable multifamily. And we've had a low income energy working group together since right around the time the Clean Power Plan kind of went away, and specifically the CEIP went away, which was the mechanism with the CPP that was supposed to be able to focus and funnel investment into low-income communities for energy efficiency and renewables. But with that group, we do have a general letter for sign-on out right now that I've shared with Kate, and people can read, can get from Kate. With the low-income energy work group's focus, we're really focusing in terms of the IRP process on a lack of low-income housing focus as a sector, and also a lack of stakeholder agency generally. Our comments will be filed along with MICAN's letter and other groups on October 6th. And it's also something we're encouraging folks to look at is the reply comment deadline of October 20th to follow up, or to some of the groups that we've worked with are thinking about doing a more specific follow-up comment coming off any of the comments they see. So wanted to flag those as opportunities for the group. Happy to answer any questions about EcoWorks work on the implementation side, or with what I was just talking about. So.
Great, thank you, Noah. And we will share that letter. We'll talk offline and figure out the best way to share that letter, with whether it's on our website or emailed out.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds great, Kate. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth Dell from Citizens Climate Lobby has joined us. I would love to kick it over to you, Elizabeth, and if you could give us an update on your work.
Sure. So for anybody who's not familiar with us, we are an international, nonpartisan nonprofit working on passing federal legislation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We advocate for a form of carbon pricing that we call carbon fee and dividend. So we have over 400 chapters. In Michigan, we have 14 active chapters, and I think we're going to be starting another one soon. And one of in addition to, of course, advocating for federal legislation, we do things to try and bring our members of Congress around kind of step by step. And one of the things we've been working on for a while now is the Climate Solutions Caucus in the House of Representatives. It's a bipartisan caucus that was started in February of 2016. Representative Carlos Curbelo, Republican from Florida, and Democrat Ted Deutsch from Florida are the co-chairs. You have to join in pairs, a Democrat and a Republican. And last year, before the election, I think there were 20 members on the caucus. Since then, it has grown considerably, and I'm really pleased to say that this week we finally added our first Michigan member to the caucus, Representative Jack Bergman. Actually, several of us on this call, he is our representative. So he joined with another Florida person, Stephanie Murphy. And so that brings the caucus to 58 members now, 29 Republicans, 29 Democrats. So it is, it's an important, growing block of voters in Congress. 24 of the Republicans were really important in defeating an amendment for the National Defense Authorization Act over the summer that would have prevented climate impact studies for the military. So they have, this caucus has introduced some legislation. Nothing has passed, but so they are, working on things, and, we're hoping that some carbon pricing legislation will be coming from them. I don't have any idea when, but there's interest. So that's enough. That's, I guess, a quick update.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's exciting. Any questions?
I just want to add that we do have there's another Michigan member of Congress who is also going to be joining the caucus. I'm hoping that will be announced in October.
Great. I want to just tell folks that are on the call but are not panelists, if you can use the chat function. If you have an update, you can type it into the chat and I can read it off for everyone, or you can email me as well. Let's go to Dan Worth. Can you give us an update as well? You're muted right now. Let's see, I can unmute you. There we go.
That works. Hi, everybody. Dan Worth up in Northwest Michigan, too. And I'm giving an update on behalf of Reamp. Catherine Savoy is running a great effort. She's just not available right now, so I'm stepping in. So it's a coalition of groups, grassroots policy across the board, all focused on getting to 80% reductions by 2050. We meet and have calls monthly. It's a large and growing group. And the main things we're working on right now, one is power mapping. So looking around the state at all our member groups and seeing where folks are engaged, where they have power, where they're working on projects. And Catherine, for those of you on the email list, has sent out a survey recently put together by Jackson Copel at Solidarity that has a series of questions to sort of start to fill that out a bit. So if you've gotten that, please return it. I think he's got 12 or 13 by now. And if you haven't gotten that, email Catherine at kathryn@ecologycenter.org, and she can get you on the list. But the idea there is to sort of see where we have power, see where we have campaigns, and continue to develop that. Another interesting new initiative is called the People's Power Plan. Catherine Savoy is pushing this. It's based on some work that was done in Kentucky by Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, sort of saying that some of the IRP work isn't necessarily a representative process. And oftentimes the state level stuff isn't. And so can we put together a grassroots people's power plan that gives the bottom up view of what things should be looking like? So she is starting an action group within the Reamp Midwest states to get interest. And I'm helping her in Michigan. So if you're interested in being involved with that, also email Catherine. Also, Reamp is running something now called the Equitable Deep Decarbonization effort. The idea is looking at the technical side to getting to 80% reduction by 2050 in built environment, generation, and transportation, but then adding an element of equity. There are plenty of technical solutions to get there, but how do the mobility ones affect those who don't have access now and could in the future? And so she'll be pushing that out through Reamp a bit, and I'm working up in Northwest rural Michigan on trying to develop a plan for the 10-county area. And that connects to one other Reamp thing, which is the Urban-Rural Divide Working Group. And so the hope is we can take an area like here in Northwest Michigan, find out what people need, the people who need it the most, and then connect it to efforts in Detroit and other urban areas. And there's the next meeting of that group, of the Reamp Michigan group, is on Tuesday, October 10th from 2 to 3:30. It will be a conference call-in. And again, if you want info on that, get with Catherine at ecologycenter.org. But the hope is to have a very broad umbrella intent, and the more folks, the better. So thanks, Kate, for setting us up.
Yeah, thank you. And sometimes we get questions about what, Reamp does. For those who aren't familiar with Reamp, and correct me if this is wrong, Dan. Dan's on the leadership team for Reamp. I have participated in Reamp as well in the state table and also regionally. And I'm part of an action team that's 100% clean cities, renewable energy cities, I think, or maybe it's 100% climate action cities. These are new action teams, but one of the things that Reamp does that I see is it really supports the work by trainings and information and research, so it helps the outreach and the outward work that a lot of us are doing. It supports that and makes it stronger and better.
Yeah, no, and it's multi-state. I think it's funded by McKnight Foundation and Garfield Foundation of Vermont, and it's doing great work. And there's an annual meeting in July that I encourage folks to come to also. I did a network training with them in Minnesota. It's a really good Midwest 5,000 feet view of what this work looks like.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. So next up we have Jim Moreno. Are you still with us? Yes, you are. I'm going to unmute you there. Jim, I am trying to unmute you and I'm not able to. Oh, there you are.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing this. It's real exciting. I like this. I just wanted to find out, first of all, if other people have noticed that there's a a lot greater interest in our efforts now because of Florida, Texas, Puerto Rico, earthquakes, stuff like that. I have noticed that myself, and God, it's about time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hope that you've seen that bump too. I'm a county commissioner in Isabella County. There's a lot of exciting things going on here. There's not just one wind project, which is Isabella Wind, which has an office in Rosebush, Michigan. If everything goes right, it should be completed by 2021. There was a big part that the farmers had to do with it. They had a steering committee in the area. They had 3 different wind companies competing for their leases. They came up with a really good pool lease. That means not just the folks on the where the turbines are get money, but everybody else does too. And it's an $800 million project. I'm very excited about it, and I've been working very hard with the PR guys, the engineers, the project managers. They're really transparent, and actually they're even given grants at this time, community grants. So and lots of folks, constituents, call me up about it. We've also had some very bad opposition from Kevin Martis, who works with the Koch brothers, spreading lies, innuendos, personal attacks, and that sort of thing. And I don't know if this is connected, but I also had my cell phone hacked so I had to get another phone. But anyway, that's really working well. There's going to be roughly 200 turbines producing 425 megawatts. Each turbine will be 2 megawatts, and as of this time, they have 40,000 acres under lease. And I guess it's like 10,000 acres per, whatever it adds up to, 425 megawatts. So, and people are calling me up about that, and I'm very excited. And that's not the only wind project that's in our county. There's also one in the southern part. It's called Pine River Energy. It's an overlap of the one in Gratiot County. And I think we're going to have 30 turbines in the west part of Michigan. And that's not all. I feel like a salesman or something. But anyway, we've also been aware in the county that there's people going around, and I really don't get this, signing leases for solar arrays in the country. You know, that really confuses me though, because wind turbines are secondary land use and you can still do crops and all that. But if you use an array, that just takes up the land. You can't grow anything, but I'll give you more details when I find out. The other thing is, and this is something that goes along with what you were saying, Kate. I'm working right now, as I always have, in getting flipping the city commission. If everything goes right, I recruited a candidate that was a health kind of person or social agency kind of person. She looks like she's going to win. There's another woman that's very young and a very librarian and very active. So when this all works out in November, hopefully, I already voted today actually, but maybe we can get on board with that 100% city thing. I'll be glad to get some information to you about that. And also, I'd like to urge everybody in your cities to do stuff like that, because it's much easier to reach out to those city commissioners, township supervisors and trustees and county commissioners to get these things done. I got one more thing. I'm also working with the health department, because I'm in the Board of Health. And we have a really bad E. coli problem in the Chippewa River due to some villages just totally sloughing off their responsibility for their human super high levels in the river. So you shouldn't even go in. So now the DEQ is going to be involved. There's going to be fines. There's going to be directives. Also, on the county level, we're working on passing a point of sale law that will ensure that there's inspections at time of sale on all properties and require a decent septic system, you know, to alleviate this. And some people say that's not really a big deal, but in Shiawassee County and Gladwood County, it diverted millions of gallons of this stuff not being in the watershed. So that's what I've been working on. I also went to the Mackinac Island County Commission Conference, and I got a lot of really good contacts. They did a workshop on wind turbines, and a lot of people in northern Michigan are really interested. And there's one more thing, and that is, I always say that, but Bill, I would like to work with you. Let me see. But I'll contact you later. I am on the environmental committee of the MAC, so that's a forum that any of you could come and I mean, contact the chair, contact me, and we'll set you up for a presentation on your different issues. And also, I'm also in the Northern Michigan Counties Association, which meets next month. It's usually about the third Monday of the month in Grayling, and that's another forum. And because when I was at Mackinac, I saw shut down line 5 signs up there, and I talked to this UP commissioner, and he said, yeah, we hate the line 5, but we have propane. What are we going to do, And I said, well, there is a program that's wood, like bad wood, trash wood in the UP, which they have a lot, and you can build power plants for a whole city or something, village, I guess. And they have plenty of wood. But anyway, okay, I'm out. If anybody has any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. That was a great update. I'm really excited, especially about the wind farms that are going up in your area. And I would love to hear more at some point soon about how you were able to help make that happen, and more details about where that's going. And if there's any if it's all spoken for, or if there's any more wind energy that maybe a city could get in on. Okay. Do you know that one? Do you know that a quick answer to that question?
Well, I do know that it's not a city thing, it's a rural thing, and there's going to be, I learned a lot about the process, but the energy produced will go into the grid, and it will go into the grid by Coleman right on the border of Midland. So we don't really, what they're looking for is a utility to buy and hold the whole project.
Oh, okay.
But there's other things too. So.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted, everybody.
Great. Thank you. So I want to give a quick update on the work that the Michigan Climate Action Network and wearing my other hat through Michigan Environmental Council we're doing to move forward more cities to set 100% renewable energy goals. Grand Rapids several years ago set the first in the state 100% renewable energy by now I believe it's by 2025. And that's for city operations. And then Northport up in Leelanau County in northern Michigan set a goal to get to 100% renewable energy as well. And then in December, Traverse City set a 100% renewable energy goal for city operations by 2020. And so now Dan Worth, who's on this call, and Elizabeth Dell, and I and several others are on a green team that are working to implement that 100% goal in the city of Traverse City. And also, after this Traverse City goal passed and people were hearing about it, we went out and talked to a lot of folks at conferences and other events. We now are talking with at least 7 other communities that are considering setting 100% renewable energy goals. Peter Sinclair has joined by phone, I believe, and so he's muted now, but I know that he has started to lead an effort in Midland. There's interest in Detroit now in moving forward, especially because they have a climate action plan that has not yet been released. That's really strong. And a new sustainability director. And East Lansing is also has started moving forward with wanting to do 100% goals. I mention those because if folks on the call that are interested in being involved in these efforts in your own communities, there are lots of opportunities, and I would love to connect you if you want to just let me know about that. And in addition to that, I think there's a lot of opportunity in these challenging times working at the local level. When the current president announced pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, in response to that, within a couple of weeks, there were 377 mayors across the country at my last count, that said that their cities were going to fulfill the agreement. And some of them said that they were going to move forward with getting their cities to 100% renewable energy. 17 or 18 Michigan mayors as well. So there are a lot of opportunities to be working with more Michigan cities to move in that direction. And I think the last update, I haven't received any other emails or comments. So the last updates before we close out this this webinar will be coming from Bill Latka, who is MICAN's, the Michigan Climate Action Network's social media guru, communications director.
Hi, guys. Well, I don't know about guru, but I'm the guy that does that stuff. So we do have one question that came in, Kate. I don't know if you missed it, but Susan Whedon asked a question about any clue why Bill Schuette refuses to shut Line 5 down. Well, we don't really know. Sean, I don't know if you can shed any light on this, but I can only imagine, you know, follow the money. Why does he want to keep the thing open? Who contributes to his campaign? I would imagine that there's some fossil fuel stuff going on. Who really knows? But you know, he talks a big game about wanting to shut it down, but then he does nothing. The latest thing that he's doing on the campaign trail is he's saying, "Hey, let's build a tunnel underneath the Straits of Mackinac in order to keep the pipeline going." You know, we all know on the Line 5 issue that you do that, and next thing you know, Enbridge is going to say, well, the rest of the pipeline is old, so we better replace it because it's leaky, and it is. It's already spilled 29 times on the other parts of the pipeline. And so their past behavior has shown us that if they complain about or if they start to listen and agree that their pipelines are leaky, they just replace them and they increase the capacity. And they do this as maintenance and not as expansion. So, you know, our desire, a lot of us, most of us working on the campaign, the Line 5 oil and water mix campaign, are really concerned about the climate. We're also talking about the water, which is a super important thing for anybody in Michigan. But you know, personally, and also as a TC 350 steering committee member, and anybody that is on this call probably knows that we have to shut this pipeline down. I mean, we cannot let it go. A tunnel underneath the straits is not good. That's a recipe for keeping it there for another 50 years. And we have to shut pipelines down. We can't leave them open. So that's a long answer to your question, Susan. Sean, do you have anything to add to that about Schuette?
Well, I mean, if there's one true North Star through Schuette's entire career, going back from Congress in the 80s through now, it's been unabashed fealty to the oil and gas companies. If you go back to, I mean, you know, this is just his MO. He's not going to shut it down. He gets money from these guys, unless he's forced to shut it down, really. I mean, if he you know, I think as far as Schuette accountability goes, if his options are shut it down or lose the governor's election, then he'll shut it down. If it's anything short of that, he won't. You go back to his record, you know, starting back in the 80s when he was in Congress, he voted the year before the Exxon Valdez spill, he voted to limit liability for oil companies after major spill events. Then you go forward to him proposing to allow slant drilling in the Great Lakes in the 90s. And then his work with Line 5 as Attorney General. It's really the one true North Star in his record is that he's bought by the oil and gas industry, frankly.
Yeah, so you know, there's a organized effort across now that it's about candidate information and letting people know where these politicians stand, and we know that there's a lot of people running that are interested in shutting it down. So it's you know, we're all going to do what we can within the purview of our 501c3 or C4 to help let the public know where people stand on Line 5 and know that we want people to vote for the ones that will shut it down. So there you go. So here's our social media update. We've been doing pretty well. We really focus
by we you mean the Michigan Climate Action Network.
Exactly. Sorry. Yeah, Michigan Climate Action Network is doing very well. So we went from 300 people liking our Facebook page back in last November, and now we've surpassed 11,500 people liking the page, the second largest environmental group in the state in terms of the Facebook following. I think we can probably hit 15,000 by the end of the year, but we can do that if everybody on this call can help to make that happen. You know, this is a great way. We found out that that's kind of like, you know, getting everybody interested by showing content that matter to people. So the more people on this call as your organization and also personally that can help to share that information that comes out on that Facebook page. And also, if you have any ideas of content, especially from your groups, but also anywhere else that you want to share, please let me know. Send me an email. I'd be happy to look at it and get it scheduled so that we have a nice consistent flow of relevant content for people that want to take action on climate in Michigan. Our reach also, depending on the month, but we reach between 100,000 and 250,000 people a month with our content. So that's pretty good, I think. So we want to keep it going and just, keep it growing. So make sure that you've liked the Facebook page, and then also another thing that we should all know is we're looking at bringing on someone else to help us with our social media reach, especially with Twitter. So anybody that's really good at that would be interested in helping out, we're looking for a person that can kind of help to take on that role.
And just to reiterate what you just said, Bill, if you have things that you want us to get out to lots and lots of people, send them our way, and we will share them on the Facebook page and send them out to the email list. That's what the network is for. Yep.
So that pretty much wraps it up. And Kate, I think any other business before we wrap up the call?
No, we're going to schedule another call for next month. I really like seeing the faces. This has been great. And we're also planning a face-to-face meeting at the end of November, tentatively. So stay tuned for that. We'll be sending out details about that. It'll be somewhere in mid-Michigan, probably Lansing. So thank you, everyone, for